This week's episode is brought to you by Campaign Refinery, an amazing new email marketing automation tool. Look, in the world of digital marketing, there's a lot to keep track of. We all know this. As much as we're in love with social media and the power of social conversation here at Social Inc. and on the All About Digital Marketing podcast, we are well aware at just how powerful email marketing can be. Email marketing is not dead. In fact, it's never been more important to help you leverage your presence everywhere else into the one channel that you'll own, regardless of what changes Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform makes in the future. I've known the founder, Travis Ketchum, for years, and he's been a past guest on the podcast, episode 15 if you want to listen to it. I've personally used his other products before, and they've been fantastic. The amount of thought that he's put into each and every one of what he's created has been incredible. I'd highly encourage you to try their free 14-day trial at campaignrefinery.com to see what world-class email marketing automation can do for you and your business. Massive thank you to Travis and Campaign Refinery for their support of the All About Digital Marketing show. Welcome to the All About Digital Marketing podcast. The show all about
digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Brought to you by Social Inc., a digital marketing agency specializing in social media and content marketing for brave brands and forward-thinking SMEs. I'm your host, Chris Bruno, and as always, we're here to bring you the most actionable tips, tricks, tools, and insights to help you achieve more when it comes to your digital marketing. Subscribe to the show and be sure to share with a friend if you found something useful or interesting. You can find all the show notes and more information on www.allaboutdigitalmarketing.co.uk. Barney, thank you very much for joining me today.
Hi, Chris.
Barney, you're the owner of Bluebell Digital Marketing. And before I get too into depth of trying to describe this myself, can you tell everyone a little bit about who you are, where you've come from, and what Bluebell Marketing does today?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much for the chance to come on the podcast. So my current thing is I have Bluebell Digital Marketing. As the name suggests, it's a digital marketing consultancy. I've been doing that probably for about 6 years. Typical services you might expect. So Google, SEO, PPC, all kinds of paid social or social media management. I do a bit of writing and journalism for papers and for clients, training and analytics and all that kind of stuff you'd expect, I guess, from your typical kind of digital marketing consultant or small agency. In terms of backgrounds, before I started this business, I used to work for Google in London. I worked there for 7 years, mainly as a sort of account manager, kind of product expert stroke kind of salesperson dealing with big brands. Google, for most of the time I was there, was verticalized. So I worked in the tech vertical. So some of my kind of big clients were people like Vodafone or Apple or T-Mobile or Three, so mobile networks, and a few of the OEMs, people like HP and Dell in the tech vertical. So just looking after them from all kind of possible perspectives, I guess, all Google products. So that would be obviously search in the early days, but then moving into when Google acquired YouTube while I was there. So much more focused suddenly on video advertising and building up the monetization for YouTube. And then towards the end, kind of mobile was becoming more and more important. And I was actually a bit of a kind of mobile specialist as well. Last couple of years I was at Google. And then just overall, I've probably been in the industry for about 20 years, which probably makes me some kind of a dinosaur, I guess, in internet years. But I've been around for a while.
A veteran, let's say, rather than a dinosaur. Experienced. I like it. Fantastic. Well, I mean, it's one hell of a jump, right? Going from Google, probably one of the largest tech companies in the world, and then now obviously what you're doing with Bluebell Digital Marketing. So can you tell us a little bit about what are the sort of services that you help clients with, and what especially helps them to achieve more results online?
Definitely a big change. I mean, just obviously in practical terms, Google, was growing a lot. The time I was there, I think it was about 100 people. We used to be in a small office in Soho. By the time I'd finished, kind of 7 years later, it's probably 3,000 or 4,000 people, engineers, all sorts of different roles, not just the kind of salespeople that were there when I started. Very, very diverse sort of group of people. So yeah, very sociable, as you can imagine. All the things you've heard about Google, lots of going out, lots of whining and dining because we were in sales, going to nice restaurants, which is nice, which we didn't have to pay for, and that kind of stuff. Had a big team ethic and a big sort of culture, as you most expect from Google. To working for yourself, maybe sat at home. I'm sat at home now. I work from home, so I'm used to all this kind of working from home that everyone perhaps is getting a bit more used to in the last 6 months. But I do try and get out and about, meet with clients, and I do some co-working as well, just to get me out of the house, sort of one day a week perhaps. In terms of services, very much I guess what I'm trying to do is maybe bring a little bit of the style that we had at Google. We were very much about what they would describe as, I guess, consultative selling. So it wasn't really like a hard sell. People were generally quite pleased to see us anyway. And so we were really, especially in my role, very much about getting people excited about new products. As I said, it could be things like mobile search at the time or YouTube ads, whatever the latest product or feature that Google had. Again, as you can imagine, I used to get an email probably every Tuesday with new products, stuff and features. That email could be quite long, so I'd have to sort of learn all the new things coming out for the existing products and all the sort of tweaks and changes, as you would have seen in kind of Google ads over the years, and all the new things that we're launching. Remarketing might launch, or a new type of YouTube ads, skippable ads, all those kind of things launched while I was at Google, and we had to get on top of that. I guess I still have that challenge to a certain extent. I'm not just got to know about Google stuff. I've got to suddenly, help clients with their SEO, all the social platforms. So I really enjoy some of the different things I do now. Naturally, when I was at Google, I wasn't talking about anything else. I wasn't talking about Facebook or that kind of stuff because they obviously are competitors. But now I'm very much about kind of just trying to understand what clients are trying to achieve, understand their business, and then give them the best recommendations that I can make. I'm not tied into any platform. I'm not getting a commission or any kind of kickback. I'm not obviously on a commission like I would have been a little bit at Google. So I have no interest particularly in pushing people towards anything. Just try and look at them holistically, think about their goals, and kind of work out a plan, a strategy, and try to be really sort of transparent with that. I guess I feel like the advantage of a small agency or a freelancer is that you can give people a very much a sort of personal service. You can be at the end of the phone, and you can be very flexible. Not to diss bigger agencies, but obviously they have certain goals in mind. They might want to tie people into contracts. They may want to kind of sell clients into a number of things at once and have quite steep kind of minimum spends and that kind of stuff. But I tend not to have that, and hopefully can bring this kind of one-to-one personal service and work with clients very much, as I say, to achieve their goals.
Fantastic. And I mean, to be fair, we are living in a completely digital first world. I actually had this conversation with somebody the other day saying, can you imagine how hard it would be as a small business to try and get your message out there if social media didn't exist? And we both kind of struggled for quite some time to figure out what people would actually do and what that would look like. But what are some of the key things that small businesses and owners especially can do, especially in those early stages? What are some of the key things that you think that they can help leverage the platforms to really help them get their message out there and to start finding new clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think he obviously does vary a little bit depending on what kind of business they are, whether it's B2B or B2C. So that really, I think, is a little bit about planning. So understanding, yourself as a business owner, what you're trying to achieve. I think I'm sure you've heard this when people come to you and say, "Well, I just want to be on Facebook, or I just want to be on TikTok, or whatever it is, whatever the latest kind of thing is that someone's heard about." That's fine, and that might be the right thing for a client. But it's not about being a kind of me too, or thinking, my competitor's doing this, or my mate down the pub is doing this. There's got to be some kind of plan, some kind of strategy behind that. So I'm very much about, kind of setting that strategy first, and then thinking about, what the tactics are sort of to achieve that. With social, there's certainly quite a lot of reward, I guess, in putting in some hard work. So whereas you can get someone like me, to help you out, or get an agency to help you out, obviously that costs money. Well, if you're a smaller business, or if you're a bit uncertain and just maybe dipping your toe in social media for the first time on a business level rather than personally, I think most people have some kind of social media probably personally. yeah, you want to be cautious. You don't want to suddenly be splurging loads of money doing paid ads, say on Facebook. I think choose your platform is probably the first thing, and base that on, factors about what you think you're going to achieve there, what kind of message or what kind of assets you have to share. If you're a B2B company, you might be thinking about LinkedIn, or you might be thinking about Twitter, probably as kind of B2B platforms. If you're, say, a restaurant or maybe a retail business, maybe Facebook appeals to you, especially a local business. Facebook might be the thing for you. If you were, say, a kind of youth-orientated business, or maybe in fashion, you might think about Instagram. So it's really about like looking at the platforms, thinking, well, where do I fit in? Have a look at your competitors. That's definitely a valid tactic. Look what they're doing, see where they're being successful. If you see some companies that you really like and you really aspire maybe to be like them, or just direct competitors, in your field and locally, see what they're doing. I'm always encourage clients to look at the competition. I would look at the competition as well myself. Try and take the best of what they're doing, and obviously avoid any pitfalls that you see them doing. And then in terms of how you kind of get going, again, there are quick fixes in terms of kind of doing some paid advertising, that kind of stuff. But I think for a start, especially from a sort of standing start when you don't really have many followers, it's just more about having some quality content that you can share with people, being very consistent. So again, don't get carried away and think, oh, I'm going to post 5 times a day and it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to post all these photographs and videos and all this sort of stuff. And think about what's realistic. So think about how much time you have. If you've only got a couple of hours, think about how that translates into a sort of daily schedule. It's not many minutes in the day, really, if you've only got a couple of hours to spend on social. Probably good to, again, not go too bad in terms of platforms. So choose 1 or 2 platforms and try and do well on those platforms and build up a sense of community, I think, around yourself is important. Look to, follow partner companies, companies that you might be inspired by, competitors as well. Follow them, see what they're doing. You can build up a lot of kind of following just by doing that, by following other companies, on Twitter, for example. And then it's all about content. So it's all about what you share. Just try and make the best of what you have. Think about the assets you have. Do you have some photographs within the company? Are people going out a lot who can maybe take some photos for you, or take short videos? It doesn't necessarily have to be kind of super professional. Obviously, things you don't want just kind of shaky footage or kind of blurry pictures. But it doesn't have to be a sort of professional photographer taking all your shots all the time, unless if you were a fashion business, naturally you would want very professional looking shots. But unless you have those kind of really high standards in your products, it's fine to be a little bit more kind of candid, maybe, or just as long as things are clear and maybe for videos, well lit. So yeah, try and share quality content. Try and have a regular schedule. I often talk to clients about this. Don't just do 5 posts one day, nothing for 2 weeks. It's much better to spread those posts out over the week and just give people, your audience, something to kind of expect, so they can manage their expectations. So they're thinking, okay, we get a post every day from these guys. It's a really good post. That's a much better thing to do. I guess finally, good advice is to really judge what you've done. Don't just judge it by kind of how you think it's gone, or even by asking other people. That those things are fine, but all the social platforms will have some kind of analytics behind them. So really dig into Facebook Insights, or to the Twitter analytics, LinkedIn analytics. They all have something behind them, Instagram as well, and see which posts were the ones that really resonated with people. Most of the social platforms work in a similar way. If you get some kind of engagement, i.e. likes and comments or shares, all those things that you can kind of click on when you see a post, if you get some of those, that will naturally spread the message further around the friends of a friend, around the networks, maybe retweeted to another person's followers. Likes and comments on LinkedIn, get some of that engagement, you might describe it as. That will then boost up the number of people that see your messages. See which of your posts, through their quality, through their interest, through their usefulness, has got lots of engagement. That will kind of tell you what works, and just try and iterate on that all the time. So you're building up, you're finding more posts like that, or you're learning little lessons from using the platform. I guess that's, again, just maybe one more final thing. always just try and learn from using the platforms. So again, I guess business owners sometimes might have platforms that are really suitable for their business, but personally they're not that interested in them. Not everyone likes Twitter, for example, or maybe not everyone's on LinkedIn or has a company page on LinkedIn. So if you're not that familiar with it personally, get in there, use it personally for a while, maybe before you even start posting for your companies, just so you get familiar with the platform. You start to learn a little bit about it, how it works, what are the kinds of things that people share. That's a really good way, I think, to familiarize yourself.
I think that's huge. There's a lot of good advice in there. And I think something that's always really important is something that you mentioned there as well. Depending on what your business is, you really need to identify where your clients or your prospective clients are actually hanging out. That gives you a really good idea of where to spend that time, that effort, those resources that may well be very limited, especially in the early stages.
It's really important to choose the right platform. And as you say, people are always time poor. Even, the biggest clients I deal with have some kind of restriction on their time or their resources or both. So, always good to try and fit in a realistic amount of time you can spend.
Couldn't agree more. And how do you help clients to identify those platforms and to really help them build up that target audience and that audience persona?
Yeah, I think a persona is a good word. I would, again, going back to this idea of having a strategy. Don't just have a sort of a back of a fag packet type strategy. Have an actual kind of written down, kind of agreed strategy, and that's something that you can really use, as a guide to everything you do. It doesn't have to be like set in stone. You can be flexible. Strategy can change. You can review it, but have something set down so that you're kind of really looking at that and thinking, is this thing that we're doing now, this social media, this Google ads, or this advertising campaign, is that fulfilling the strategy? How is that helping us achieve these goals that we've agreed in the business amongst ourselves, with the management, et cetera, et cetera? We've put budgets towards it. How is that kind of working to the strategy? So that always gives you a bit of a sense check, I guess, on any kind of tactics that you're choosing. In terms of social media, once you set out your kind of broad goals, you may think about the next step being kind of really identifying what your audience is. Like you mentioned yourself, Chris, there's different audiences on different platforms. Something like Facebook, these days it started off, just with college students, but quickly as it grew and grew and grew over the years, it's very broad based now. Your mum is on Facebook, your sister's on Facebook, your uncle's on Facebook, so everyone's kind of on Facebook who uses the internet, fairly actively. There are groups that are more active than others, but it's fairly broad based. Something like Instagram, still fairly youth orientated, probably moving a little bit away from that as it gets bigger and as Facebook kind of integrates it into their platform more, as Facebook acquired it a few years ago. So that's probably still quite youth orientated, but maybe getting a bit more broad based. Twitter, again, Twitter's a funny one. Some people love Twitter, some people hate Twitter. It's quite influential. It's reasonably small in some ways. It's been overtaken, by Instagram in recent years in terms of the monthly users, but it's still incredibly influential. People talk about Twitter all the time. It's beloved of politicians and journalists, and often has a kind of community around things that you're interested in. It's can be really good for B2B clients. They may find that a lot of the people within their industry can be quite active on Twitter and be sharing different updates, different news articles, maybe different events. So it can be really useful, and you can kind of carve out a kind of community of your own on a place like Twitter. So I think thinking about the platforms, think about, is your audience there? But if you've really set down, in the strategy in a bit more detail what your audience is, that will really help you. So the way that people do that is, sometimes products or services, I guess, are aimed at a very specific audience, and it's quite easy to say who they are. Sometimes, especially I guess with consumer products, can be a bit more broad based, and you might have several different personas. And it's a typical marketing thing, I think, to kind of map those out. So if you were a big company, I don't know, so go back to Vodafone, I used to work with a lot. They'll have several personas, of people that are interested in targeting. They could have, families. So like an iPhone for mum and dad, and maybe a kind of more simple phone for the kids and teenagers. They might have family plans that address that. They may have other kind of audiences like, I don't know, early adopters. So the people who are going to buy, the iPhone 12 that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time. The people who are going to straight away, buy that or even get in a queue at the Apple shop to get the iPhone 12 straight away and probably buy the best model and the biggest screen and all this sort of thing. And they may have, different age groups. There may be all sorts of different ways you can kind of cut your audience up. But if you do have these personas in mind, it really helps you with your content. So helps you choose the platforms. So straight away you think, well, where are these people going to be? Okay, they're going to be on Facebook, they're going to be on LinkedIn, they're going to be here on Twitter or on Pinterest, all the different places they could be. And there's lots of information on the web. So again, if you're not sure about who's on which platform, there's plenty of surveys and information that tells you, this is the size of Pinterest. Pinterest is more female orientated, and it's this age group, etc., etc. So that research will either come from the companies themselves, or sometimes it comes from third parties like a Nielsen or some kind of research company will tell you what kind of people make up the audience of a particular social network. Yeah, so you can address your messages to these people on the right platform, and then even more so if you have these marketing personas, when you're creating your content, you can have a little bit in mind maybe that this content is for these people. If you just have one audience, then it's fine. It's probably kind of probably similar all the time. But maybe sometimes you're addressing a message in your marketing to a particular group of people. Obviously, that will start to dictate what kind of things you might share, what kind of even formats you might use, or if it's younger kids, would they like a kind of short video? If it's a B2B message, do they want a white paper? Something quite serious or some research. So really that can often change what you're saying. And it can give you inspiration as well. So you think, well, what can I say today? Okay, we haven't really done anything for families recently. Okay, that gives me an idea. I can do that. So it can give you a lot of inspiration. It can really help target what you're doing. And it can make sure that I think you're on the right path to hitting your goals, because you're using the strategy that you've come up with and you're kind of referring back to that strategy and perhaps analysing your results and seeing if they are in fact hitting the people that you want to hit.
I think strategy is always the number one or the first step for anybody. And even if it's the most simplistic of strategies, which all of these things, they always change. I think it's Mike Tyson's quoted for saying, we all have a plan until we get punched in the face. But the idea is really simple, right? Until you know exactly what you're going to start trying to do, you don't really get a feel for what does and what doesn't work for you, for the audience especially. And I think that starting step of having an idea of who you want to target, having an idea of how you're going to target them, where you're going to target them, and what sort of content you're going to create, that strategy at the very beginning, even if it's very basic, and even if we all know that it's going to change to a certain extent, it's still an absolute godsend, because it removes all the procrastination that could potentially happen once you are about to get out there and actually start posting stuff. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with quite extensively. Trying to just sort of think on the fly and I'll post something tomorrow morning. I'll get that done this afternoon. I'll come up with something. It's very, very hard, actually. I've been doing this for only 12 years, so I'm a semi-veteran compared to you. But the idea has always been that. We've seen it time and time again. Companies that are doing well, that are successful for whatever reason, but their social presence, for example, just doesn't really help them, because it's so quick and easy for it to go a day, suddenly it's a week, suddenly it's been a couple of weeks, now it's been a month, and actually there's been no content because nothing is scheduled, nothing is planned out, nothing is kind of done ahead of time. So I think from your point of view, what would you suggest as people in terms of actually getting on top of it? Content calendars, scheduling content. Would you say that's very important, especially in those early stages?
Yeah, no, that's really important, actually. It's a really good point you're making there, Chris, because I think, we've all had the problem of coming to your kind of laptop and thinking, oh, what am I going to post today? I've posted everything I could think of and I'm out of ideas. And that's not a very sort of efficient way of working. And, we all kind of panic, I suppose, when we're put on the spot. So that's basically what you do to yourself every day. If you don't plan, you're kind of putting pressure on yourself, thinking, well, I haven't got much time. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And you're kind of in a panic. And maybe that just means you do something that's not that great, or you're a little bit sort of desperate to find anything and you just kind of post that. I think the planning thing, is really important. The strategy is obviously a kind of plan in itself, a kind of overarching plan. But in terms of social, having call it an editorial calendar, could just call it a sort of plan. Something can be something very simple. You don't have to necessarily use software or anything. I would sometimes just use Google Calendar for that, or whatever sort of calendar you prefer. If you put dates, things that are important to the business, into a planner, that really helps you. Helps you in a couple of different ways. You've got all your kind of seasonal events. So if you're a florist, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day are going to be really important to you in the calendar. If you're a costume shop, then Halloween is going to be a big date for you. All these things come along, all these kind of seasonal things. I mean, some of them are kind of obvious, but it's good to plan ahead for these things because some of them can be really huge for certain types of business. So there's all those kind of seasonal things. The other type of events you'll get, especially again, if you're more of a sort of B2B company, you might have things like conferences, you might have speaking opportunities for senior people within the business, and you might have all sorts of kind of business events. Obviously, at the moment, people aren't tending to go to any of these things, but in general times, normal times, people are going out about, they're meeting clients, they're going to events, they're speaking in places, they're doing different things. All of these things you can kind of capitalize on, with your social media. Problem is, though, if, as happens to me sometimes with my clients, people only tell me, tomorrow we're doing this huge event, Barney. That doesn't really give me much time to do anything about it. And all that means is that I'm going to have to scrabble around to do a post. And I'm probably just going to post once about it. And it's all going to be a little bit rushed. If you have it planned out, it means you can do so much more with a single event. So say your client is speaking at an event. If you have that in the diary, let's say a month ahead, there's loads of stuff you can do to prepare for that. You can post about it even a month ahead. Say, we've got this great event coming up. So-and-so is going to be speaking at it. You can start promoting that event. As you kind of build up towards the event, maybe you can do some more posts about it. Maybe you can talk about some of the other people that are speaking at the event, what's going on. You can post links and kind of get people interested in it. As you come up to the event itself, obviously you tell people today is the day, so-and-so is speaking at the event. We're going to sort of live tweet it, or we're going to there's going to be a streaming video, or we're going to post some clips, all these different things you can do. So on the day, you can maybe have several posts about it. You can even have, as I say, a live stream or something, or you could be posting little video clips or photos from the speaking opportunity. All these things mean that you're having, rather than having one rushed post today or on the day, you're having a series of planned posts, making the most out of this event. Now, these events are often things which clients have paid for. They might pay to attend a conference. They may have to pay for a speaking opportunity, or just, the sheer time out of the office for someone who's a managing director. Obviously, their time is really valuable. So, you want to make the most out of that. You want to make the most marketing impact. And you want to get the message across that person is trying to deliver to an audience in a room. You want to try and spread that message as far and wide as possible, using the internet, using social media. So naturally, if you're in a room, you could speak to 50 people or 100 people. If your message, goes out on quite a popular social media account, and some people, react to it or share it, maybe you're hitting hundreds or even thousands of people with that message. You're certainly taking it a lot further than just the people that were in the room at the time. Most conferences and things will have a hashtag. So again, use the hashtags. That will, create a bit of interaction, and that's a really good way to sort of make the most out of something. So having this planning approach, it means you're not stressed, so you can kind of look ahead. So if you've got all these events in the diary on Monday morning or even the Friday before, say, right, I know this is happening next week. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I have in mind for my posts about that. Some people will even kind of do the posts, miles ahead of time and kind of schedule them in. You can either use kind of like Hootsuite to schedule stuff, or most of the platforms have some kind of scheduling ability. LinkedIn perhaps being the exception to that. Even Twitter has got a scheduling fairly recently, so that's useful. So you can schedule stuff ahead, and you can make sure that stuff is posted at the right time, the time when your audience might be kind of most active. But yeah, having this planning approach, having an editorial calendar or some kind of plan, I think really takes a lot of stress off yourself, makes you much more efficient, and it means you can make the most of things. So again, rather than say one post per an important event, you could have actually, as I said, described a series of posts, just making your life, basically a lot easier, and probably creating better social media, that people are going to enjoy a lot more and be more effective.
It's amazing how much a little planning can actually go and how far it can go. Sorry. And like you said, I think there's something key there. If you've got an event coming up, it's not one social media's post worth. It's not even two, a pre and then a post, how the event went. It's a whole series of content, which if you can then post during the event whilst you're there, if anyone else is there as well, they want to meet, you've got this whole way of communicating with people and building that community around that particular event. But I think it's the same thing for a lot of small businesses. if you've written a good white paper or a good blog post or whatever it might be, a good research study, case study, whatever, that single piece of content shouldn't be just one social post as well. And we talk to people about this a lot, especially when it comes to like blog content, whereby they'll post it and then they'll share it on social media and then it's basically forgotten. And companies that are posting, if you've been doing it for a couple of years and you post one blog post a week, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at the end of the 2 years, that's over 100 pieces of content that you can revise, you can update, refresh if you want to, but more importantly, that can just help you to keep fueling your social media because you wrote good content, you put the time and effort in. It's not one blog post equals one piece of content. And I think the repurposing cycle or upcycling of content is just so big, the potential. And it's something that we've learned a lot about being involved with podcasts and even for our own material. We'll create a video. From that video, we'll transcript it. From the transcripts, we'll create blogs. From the blogs, we'll create quote graphics. And then from the video itself, we'll create short videos. So one piece of long form video content can actually give us, or in fact, it does currently, about a month's worth of social media content. And we try and explain this to people because it's a real shame. You're missing opportunities that are easy to grasp. With a little bit of planning and a little bit of insight or forethought, you can suddenly turn one thing into lots of things. And I was just wondering, from your point of view, do you see this a lot, or is it just me that's been unfortunate? But do you see this a lot? And actually, do you feel that companies could be maximizing what they already have to a much higher degree as well?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that is good for that is, I would say is the responsibility for social media, within a company will often fall on, say, one person or maybe a very small team, if it's a bigger company. But it's normally just one person. It may not even, most of the time, it's probably not even their main job. So that's where the time, pressures come in. They maybe just be given the responsibility for social media when they're doing other things, other marketing, or even just, other stuff that's not even related to marketing. So yeah, it can be a little bit of an afterthought, but it's certainly always very squeezed, in terms of time. So I think the importance of kind of making the most of, or, what you might call the assets, so whether that's video or photos or blogs, written stuff, that is really important. And as you say, one kind of piece of information or content that's been produced, clients, again, can spend a lot of time and money potentially creating content, especially if they've done a research piece or something they commissioned, through another company. As you say, you don't want to throw that away really with a single post. There's nothing wrong with repeating posts. So if something's really important and really kind of important, vital to the marketing, a really kind of big message or something that people spend a lot of time on, and then share it again a week later. Maybe just share it in a different way. And there's always ways, like you said, to kind of cut things up. To make most of them, to make several posts out of them. I think the other thing about that is that just on a practical level, most social media is very much about kind of bite-sized content or just very quick bits of content. So that's not always that good sometimes, actually, for some of the messages that the companies want to get across. Again, especially in the sort of less consumer space, in the B2B space, you might have people who have quite technical products or things which really do need a bit of a sort of long content about them or long videos. And if that's the case, that's awkward sometimes a little bit for social media because, most of them have limits on the amount you can upload. Certainly Instagram, you can only be a very short video or, and people don't want to necessarily watch long videos. So I would say for that kind of challenge, doesn't mean you can't put forward a kind of complex message or you can't share long content, but think about how you can present that. So do you present it by having a just kind of executive summary in your post on social media, and that leads you to the longer content? So you just summarize, you pick out the key points, or even, again, several posts talking about different aspects of something. If it's a video, maybe you've got a long sort of 10-minute video. Do you kind of take out sort of excerpts from that? Do you have, kind of sort of quotes or just very short clips from a video? You could share those on social media, get people interested in that, and then obviously bring them to the longer content, which maybe sits on YouTube, maybe sits on YouTube on your site, wherever it's going to sort of finally sit. I think social media is a really good way of distributing content and signposting content. So, that content could sit somewhere else, but you can use a little bit like a headline writer in a newspaper, especially online. They've got a headline and maybe a kind of short strap line and summary to get people interested enough to click through to read the whole article. That's kind of the job that you have on social media. So, especially say on Twitter, you've got a very short amount of text to play with. Even on Facebook, you don't want to have some huge, essay about stuff. You're normally kind of taking people away off the platform to read longer form content. So you've got to get them excited. You've got to kind of be like a headline writer. Think about another thing I'd say to clients is that sometimes you see some people's efforts of how they present things, and without being too critical, they're not really thinking in this vein, and they're just being very kind of descriptive and a little bit boring. They're just saying, "Here's an article about our recent conference," and that that's fine. It tells you that they had a conference, it was recent, but it's not really getting you excited as to what you might learn in the article. It's not really telling you anything. Of all the things that you're going to see, say you're looking at a news feed and there's all these articles going down, all these tweets, all these Facebook posts, all these LinkedIn posts. Why are you going to click on that? It just kind of says, "Here's a conference." So you really got to kind of make things a bit more exciting. Think about it, and perhaps more in a marketing kind of mindset. Tell people, what value are you going to get from reading this article? Maybe, make a comment about it. Say, this article really shows the impact of COVID-19 on our industry. And that straight away is a much more interesting kind of thing, intrigues people, pulls them in. You've got to kind of pull out what the value is from a piece of content, which people can't see yet. And obviously you've got to kind of pull them into that, get them to click. You don't want to be like clickbaity or sort of falsely sort of upsell or kind of exaggerate the excitement for a particular piece of content. But you do need to kind of pull out, what's the reason for reading this? What value is there? Why is it interesting? Why is it useful? Why do I kind of care? That's quite important, and you don't have much space to do that. So try and make the most of your content, like you said, Chris. Maybe there's lots of different versions of things you can put out. Maybe you're using clips. Maybe you're summarizing and then hoping that kind of teaser brings people into longer content. But you can make the most of the assets that the company has. Most companies, do not have. They're not Nike. They're not Disney. They don't have Star Wars to talk about, or they don't have all these film trailers or amazing sports people and Michael Jordan and all these guys doing crazy things. Most companies don't have that. They don't have an unending kind of library of cool content. They have some content, and if they want more, they probably have to pay for it, and they may not want to do that. So making the most of what you've got and being quite tactical about it and planned, I think is really important for most small companies, especially.
I think that's awesome. Again, I think it's really important that people try to remember it's not because you find it desperately interesting or that you loved what you talked about. It's why somebody else should stop what they're doing, which is usually mindlessly flicking through content, and actually pay attention to that. And I think that's really important. I'm glad that you caveated it with, don't be clickbaity. There's nothing worse, but actually give people a reason to see very quickly what it is, what it's about, and why they should read it. And I think that's a really simplistic way to make sure that your content has at least twice as much chance of actually being read by people. And I think that's something that a lot of people could do more of, and especially in these times when a lot of people are sat in front of devices pretty much all day, every day, because we're not really going out as much as we used to, and we're not really doing the same things as we used to. But that's fine. A quick question then for you. In terms of how you see things progressing and how you see the future for especially small businesses, what would you say are some of the key things that people should be investing their time into and learning and understanding more?
I mean, I think at the risk of sounding self-serving, I'm going to say naturally, I think particularly at the moment, digital, is really important. And the reason I say that is not just because that's how I pay my bills, but COVID-19, as we all know, has been pretty impactful on everyone's lives. It's changed a lot of things. People have had to change the way they're living, the way they're working, and the way they do things, kind of overnight almost. People who've normally jumped on a train to go to London, suddenly they're at home, in the back bedroom, working from home. All their colleagues, are kind of distributed around the home counties or wherever they might live. People are spending a lot of time online. People are doing, video calls and Zooms and all these kind of things. So a lot of people have been kind of pushed, I suppose, a little bit into doing stuff which they didn't used to do. Maybe very traditional companies, say like your lawyers or your accountants who sometimes are quite traditionally minded have suddenly had to, do a lot of video conferencing, which perhaps they didn't do so much before. It's really pushed people to do things they haven't done before. And I think what it's done is maybe sped up stuff that was happening already because, we're the best one in the world. Video calling is not new. We all had, video calling for a while. Zoom is perhaps an emerging company that not everyone has heard of 6 months ago. But, you've been able to do, obviously, video conferencing in various different forms, for many years. That's always been there. People perhaps have preferred, to meet people, to even fly, to New York to meet someone rather than have a video call. But it has existed. The technology has been there. So we've been pushed to using that. The working from home thing is interesting. Again, I suppose a lot of, more traditionally minded companies have been skeptical of working from home. They feel like their staff will just mess around on Facebook and not do any work. That has maybe largely been disproved. But even if they are messing around on Facebook, they are getting the work done, within the time. And there's been a certain amount of, a bit of a surprise at that. And people have found they've obviously enjoyed spending time with their families and not having to travel so much, and there's less expense. So lots of sort of swings and roundabouts. I guess the negatives have been that people enjoy obviously spending time with their colleagues, and some people question whether you can be quite as creative when you're all kind of distributed. How can you have all these idea sessions and all the casual kind of encounters you have, when you meet someone at the water cooler, and all those water cooler moments people describe it as, how do you have those online? It's not quite as easy to do that. So lots of change. I think what it means for small businesses, without being harsh, I think you just have to look around at the impact it's had on the high street. Even people like like John Lewis, who are very, very forward-thinking companies, have had good e-commerce for a long time. Even those kind of companies, who most people would think of as a leading retailer, they're planning to shut a few of their big stores. Other companies have gone out of business. Other companies are laying off lots of staff. The retailers are really having to change. They're realizing that having all these kind of big box stores is quite expensive. How can they compete, with Amazon? At the same time, during lockdown, the Amazons of the world are, 2 or 3 times what they would make in revenue normally. I think, a big stat is that before lockdown, I think about 20% of retail was done online. The other 80%, in a traditional manner of going to the shop. Since lockdown, it's been 30% online. So that's a huge, huge change. It means that, it's not just people who are used to buying stuff, who love Amazon, who are always buying stuff, and it's coming to the next day, et cetera, that are doing it. It's your mum and dad. It's all the people in your life. They're actually getting into e-commerce because they've had to, and they've had to, especially older people perhaps haven't been able to go outside, or they've been worried about going to the supermarket. So they're getting into Ocado and ordering, from Sainsbury's or whatever their local supermarket is. So they've suddenly, got on to doing that. People are just maybe discovering lots of different e-commerce sites and they haven't perhaps used before, and realizing, the fantastic aspects of e-commerce, that you can order things really quickly and they just kind of come to you. So lots of changes in people's behavior. I think what it means for businesses is that they have to be online, and lots of people who had shops have suddenly had to maybe put up a website or improve their web presence, and I think that is the way forward. Increasingly, the high streets are going to be emptier. There's not going to be so many shops. Certain types of shop perhaps will completely disappear from the high street and just be purely online. It will go the other way a little bit. So you've seen people like Amazon opening up food stores, so that they've opened up real world stores as well. Those might be more sometimes as kind of flagship stores to sort of demonstrate products. In London, like the sort of Nike Town or the Apple shop, the Apple store, on Regent Street. Those are kind of big brand experience stores. So maybe you'll see more of that, where you can go and experience the brand in a big store, but actually lots of your commerce happens online. And I think if companies, don't have some kind of online element to their offering, and they don't do that soon, they're just really going to die out, and their businesses can disappear. What will happen is that either the marketplace will just completely change, and they'll just be left behind, or just rivals that they have will kind of get onto online and start delivering their service online or selling their products online. They'll just be kind of undercutting the traditionally minded company. They'll just be able to maybe reduce their costs a lot, and that would just push these kind of sort of digital laggards, I suppose you might describe them as, just push them out of business. We've seen it already during lockdown, and I think this big change has happened, and I don't think we're going back. I think a lot of people who've tried, the Ocados of the world, or tried doing online shopping, they may not continue doing that forever. They may start going back to doing some high street shopping, but they're certainly going to do a lot more e-commerce, and I don't think it's going to go down, go back. It's only going really one way. So it's really important, I think, to start kind of waking up to digital within your business. If you don't have anything at all, start thinking about what you can do. And if you do have a presence, if you have a website that looks like it's from the days of Yahoo, then maybe you need to sort of do a bit of work on that, bring it up to date. There are trends, there are fashions in web design, as there are in other things like clothes and home design. So things do start to look dated sometimes. And also there's lots of new functionality and things like that come around. So make sure you're up to date. I guess the other thing is make sure your website is fast without getting to all the complexities. As I'm sure you know, Chris, Google will penalise your website in SEO. So for those rankings on Google search, if it's slow, especially on mobile, and it will also penalise you if you're doing Google advertising. So yeah, you can do it. You can do a page speed test. If you search for that on Google, you can test out your site. And it gives you advice actually on what you can do to change it. Really important to have a fast site, and really important to make it enabled for some kind of e-commerce or some kind of delivery of your services. If you're a service company, that might just mean speaking to people online. It might mean getting quotes or just some kind of digital enablement. But it is the future, and that future has been sped up. Maybe we are now where we would have been in 2 or 3 years' time, but that's where we are today. And I think the news that we're seeing around this time is just showing that this pandemic is really going to last for maybe another 6 months at least. So these changes are going to be pretty fundamental, and they're not going away and not going back.
Barney, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and for giving everyone a lot to think about, and especially to action, which I think is the important part. Before we say goodbye, though, where can people find you online, Barney? What's the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, so the website is bluebelldigital.co.uk. If you search for Barney Durrant, I'm on LinkedIn, and I have a few other digital platforms. But yeah, just head to the website. You can contact me there. And I'm always happy to speak to businesses about their digital marketing and have a chat about what they could do, and hopefully, get them doing some of the cool stuff that we've been talking about, Chris.
Barney, thank you so much for your time.
Yep, cheers, Chris. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
The All About Digital Marketing podcast is brought to you by Social Inc., a distributed digital marketing agency specialised in delivering results through online campaigns. Whether it's content marketing, social media marketing, online advertising or web design, we've got you covered, from strategy through to delivery. If you're struggling with your digital marketing, get in touch today by simply visiting www.socialinc.co.